Hello there, and welcome to the channel. So, sorry for the delay. I just wanted to wait until a few people turned up, but here I go. Okay, so it's been a while since I've done mentioned anything about my transition, really, other than on other people's channels where I just joined in for chit chat or whatever. But things are now really starting to change for me. It's have I done this right? Let me just yes, okay, it's fine. So this is a transition update. I just did a little video a few minutes ago that was a parody, and I think a couple of people liked it already, so that's good. So what's been going on? Well, the NHS, if I want to sort of give you a whole holistic picture rather than just like what's going on with me at this moment. So the UK system for transgender people isn't very good. It's incredibly slow, and it takes an awful lot of time in order for things to happen. There's a lot of wait keeping, a lot of gatekeeping, and it's kind of necessary in a way for some people, but also not for others. I mean, waiting. I've had to wait 2.25 years before anything started, and so let me explain what happened. So in December 2018, I finally, after knowing about it for years but just denying myself, I finally said to, I went to my doctors and asked him to refer me to a gender identity clinic. I'd known since I was 25, I'm 47 now, that I was trans. But, I always deny myself because it was always what my mum think, what will neighbours think, what will friends and family and colleagues and, YouTube friends and strangers on the street think. And there were just too many negatives, so I just hid it. I dressed up at home and whatever, But all that changed in sort of in the summer of 2018, when I decided that, when Jade died, I needed a new outlet because I used to go to these private gatherings and that became impossible. So I needed a new outlet and going up in real life, and it was like, you know what, this is really working for me. Why did I leave this for so long? So I decided to transition. So in December 2018, I went to my doctors and I asked him to refer me to a gender identity clinic. That happened. My referral hit their desk at the Leeds Gender Identity Clinic in late December. I think it was about like the 21st or something. I can't remember exactly. So you just wait a couple of months, and then you have the screening call, and the screening call is where they try to figure out what it is that you want out of the service. And it also kind of weeds out the people that aren't really sure. I say time wasters because that's not really fair. There are people that are questioning their gender and they're not really sure yet, and so they say, okay, well, our resources are limited. Let's send you some information. Have a think about it, and if you need a help, come and get back to us, And the Leeds Gender Identity Clinic has more people joining them, their list, than they deal with people on that list. So in the February, I asked when my first assessment would be. Now, you generally go through 2 assessments, and then on the second one, they recommend your doctor, prescribes hormones. Because they don't prescribe hormones themselves, they get your doctor to do so. So, so in February, I asked how long it would be for the first assessment, and I was told 18 months. Now, this is 2019 now. This is before COVID, a year before COVID. By the autumn of that year, it had gone to 27 months, and by the end of the year it had gone from 20 to 29 to 30 months, which is 2.5 years. And then COVID came along and pretty much shut all the clinics. They weren't taking people on. They were dealing with people that maybe, maybe they dealt with already or something. They were doing some internet calls, Zoom type calls, but generally they shut the clinic down. They didn't see anybody. And so it was just a big waiting game to see, what happened. Well, 2020 was basically written off. So, so if I was still with Leeds, and this is where things have changed, and I'll get to that in a moment. So, their website today says that they are dealing with people that were added to their list in November of 2017. So that's a year before, and it hasn't changed since. So I don't know whether that's still the case or whether they're still dealing with the people from November. And this was the end of last year. Sorry, try again. The early part of this year. Now, and they don't even put how long it's, how long they expect the times to be anymore on their website. So, given that they were only dealing with people for from 2017, that means I'd be waiting a year and a half for the first assessment, and then another year and a half for the second assessment, which could be something like somewhere between May and November 2023. That's 2 years from now. I've already been waiting for 2 years, but if we, like I say, let's make it 3 if we get rid of 2020 and COVID. So it's a long time to wait. And I had considered going private. The wait was killing me. And when I started on this journey, I was 44, approaching 45. I'm now 47. And so it's a long time to wait. So I was looking to get the money together to go private, because there are private gender identity clinics in the UK, most of them in London, and that could get me over a short amount of time to the hormone stage, because that's the stage I'm looking for. Any choices about surgery and any of that kind of stuff, that can wait. And so I just want to get to the hormone stage, because that's what I'm after now. That's the point I'm up to. I've done the my social transition is pretty much done. I'm pretty much there. I still have a couple of little things going on, like, for example, I still suffer a little bit of imposter syndrome, transgender imposter syndrome, which is kind of like still not brilliant at considering himself a woman as such, but happy to say I'm a trans woman. And of course this has nothing to do with TERFs or anything like that. So and an example of where I'm still kind of uncomfortable is when it comes to going to ladies' bathrooms. I still have a bit of sort of, I go in, I shut the cubicle and everything, and then if anybody comes in, I wait until they leave, because I don't want to end up with a scene or something like that, because someone thinks I shouldn't be there or whatever. It's silly, really, because most people don't care. But this will come with confidence over time. Anyway, so so I was like, okay, I think I'm going to go private, because this weight is killing me. Really, it is. It fills you full of a lot of despair. Just for an example, I go on Twitter, and I see someone that's just got hormones, and you're like, brilliant, brilliant, fantastic for you, but inside you're kind of crying because it's like, but when's it going to be my turn? You know, and when you see this again and again and again, it kind of crushes you a little bit each time. So now a new pilot program of 3 new clinics was looking to be open. There was one going to be happening in Manchester, and then last year, in December of last year, it happened. It started, and because I'm in the Greater Manchester area, so it only covers the Manchester area. There's one that covers Manchester. There's another one that's Liverpool, Merseyside, and Cheshire, and then there's another one in London. So let me just take a quick drink. So the one in Manchester only covers the Manchester area, you know, the umbrella kind of thing. Which means, and so all the people that are assigned to other clinics like Leeds or Sheffield or wherever, those are still. They basically gave their list to this new Manchester one because it's all part of the NHS, and they were, you know, they've opened this new one. So I was contacted in February. Let me just look it up because I can't remember it. I've got the exact date written down. That's not the one. There it is. So it was the 8th of February that I was contacted, and you know, it's like, okay, I was number 4 on her list of people in, you know, that have been waiting the longest. They'd already dealt with a load of people. I mean, they dealt with over 150 people already before I came along, and that's just in Manchester. Now, just to give you an idea, the worst performing one was Exeter, which dealt with 2 people in an entire year. Now, even if we get rid of the fact that most of that year was COVID, it's still 4 or 5 months that they did nothing. You know, they dealt with 2 people, so that's just awful. So in February, I had a phone call from this new Manchester Indico Gender Identity Clinic, and they wanted to move me from Leeds to theirs, which meant that the queues were shorter. So can we move you? Yes. There was no delay. There was no delay when I was asked. You know, it was like, yes. The queues are shorter. Yes. And so a week later, just a week later, I had the screening call. Not like 2 and a bit months later, a week later. And then on the 23rd, so just a week and a half after that, I got the date for my first assessment, and the first assessment was on the 25th of March. So, and I've been told that the next, my next assessment will be 4 to 6 weeks after. And so far, 6 weeks seems to be the number, because I know a couple of other transgender people that are under them, and 6 weeks seems to be the limit that they try to go. That's their goal, and they're achieving that goal. And what makes this system different is because they're doing it on a primary care basis. Now, just to give you an idea what that means, so primary care is where you go to your doctors, and you know, like, oh, I've got a bit of a weight problem. Okay, well, see the dietitian, see the transgender doctor. Effectively, that's what this is like. It's you know, a much simpler stage, unlike the more traditional gender identity clinics where you end up being, you know, referred, and then eventually they deal with you as a specialist service. Well, because they've got decades worth of administration of how they do things, they still have sort of a shadow of the days when being transgender was considered a mental disorder. Gender disorder, gender identity disorder was what it was referred to at one point. It's now gender incongruence. So, and as a result, you have to kind of, historically, you had to convince them that you were trans enough for them to help you. So, whereas this new Indigo Gender Identity Clinic in Manchester, it's like, okay, what are your goals and how can we help you to achieve them? That's the way they operate. It's fantastic by comparison. So, so that it's brilliant that it's all happening so fast. And it actually felt, for the first sort of week or two, it felt like really, really scarily fast, because I've been waiting for so long. Suddenly things are happening and it's like, things being thrown at me quite quickly. And actually I'm going to write something down so I don't forget to mention it. And my best analogy is if you imagine that you got to phone your phone company or your gas company or the electric or whoever, and because of COVID there were only 4 people in the telephone centre, so everybody ends up waiting over an hour before the phone is answered. So you're there listening to the music and every sort of minute or so they say, your call is important to us, we'll be with you as soon as someone becomes available. And of course, you haven't heard that 58 times already. So, but when somebody suddenly does answer, it's like, your brain is like, oh my God, someone answered. What was I going to tell them about? Oh yeah, that's right. And, it takes you a couple of seconds to get your head into, this is what I want to talk about after all the damn waiting you've been doing. And I did forget to add something that I meant to say a short while ago about Leeds. The reason why the waiting list is so long is because they have a budget for 27 people a month, but they have over 100 referrals a month. This is before COVID. So you can imagine the queues get longer and longer and longer all the time. This is why it went from 18 to 27 to 29 to 30 months in during that 1 year. And on top of that, sorry, I forgot where I was going now. To give you a good analogy for this, think about it in a COVID sense. So there's a store that's popular, and they've got the ability to get 27 people through the store an hour, thanks to social distancing and mask wearing and all that kind of stuff. So imagine they've got the ability to get 27 people through an hour, but they have over 100 people joining the queue an hour. Imagine what that queue is going to be like by the end of the day. If we turn days into months, which becomes years, it's just crazy how long it takes. So suddenly having my transitions actually starting now, I'm not waiting until 2023, somewhere sort of to mid of the end of 2023, and of course who knows if that'll get even further. No, I should be getting hormones by the summer. Not by the end of the summer, it might be the start of the summer, because my next assessment is coming up very soon. I phoned up my care navigator. She said that the doctor who's dealing with me, which is great, I love that. His name is Dr. Wookie. Yeah, at first I wanted to sort of growl at him, but I thought best not. But no, I've never been assessed by a Wookie before. But anyway, so when I called last week just to see how what's going to be happening for the second assessment, and I was told that the doctors, they have several of them, and they like do 1 day a week. And my doctor goes in on Thursdays, and so he's he looks through the paperwork. So my blood tests that I had done, because one of the things on the first assessment was going to get you some blood tests, and that yeah, so I had a blood test already going on because I've got a bit of a thyroid problem at the moment. And actually spoke to my doctor, a doctor today about that, who phoned me up. But I had a blood test coming up for that regarding my thyroid thing, and it's like, well, might as well just get both the bloods done at the same time, and they can get the stuff that you need done at the same time. So and that saved me going all the way to Manchester for them to take blood there. So the General Identity Clinic has got my blood work now, and just waiting for the doc. She said she was. I phoned up on Wednesday, and she said that he'll be in tomorrow, and he usually spends the first couple of hours looking at the blood work stuff and dealing with things like that before assessments start in the afternoon kind of time, and that that he'd either be looking through it this week or next week, but probably this week. So I could end up having a phone call tomorrow with the date for my second assessment. And the assessment was done over the internet. It was it was like a Zoom call, but not. So yeah, like I say, it's all starting to happen now. Oh, that's excellent, Microraptor. I'm really excited about the hormones thing. I really am. It's not like one of these things that will happen one day. This is going to happen soon. And one of the things that I've been told about what happens when someone first starts taking hormones is that they get a real sense of relief. That to create an analogy, if you imagine someone who's got schizophrenia, and when they start taking the pills, that's when the voices in their head go away. I don't know why they say voice in their head as opposed to voices in their legs. Voices in their hands, voices in their feet. But anyway, so so like I say, I'm kind of looking forward to that. And I've already started going through some things that are interesting. And one of them is, and again, it comes down to the social side, up here, is that I've found myself more able to feel my emotions. There's a kind of thing about big boys don't cry, and guys don't cry. You're supposed to bottle up your emotions and things like that, and of course I always used to. And as an Aspie, I really struggled to do anything with emotions, really. They tended to come out when I got into a rage because someone had upset me or, something like that. But I've already noticed that because I'm living as I'm living now, or all the time, this is me all the time now, that I'm free to actually show that they exist. That I can, it's not even, I'm not even subconsciously blocking it anymore. I'm subconsciously not bothering to block it anymore. So I can suddenly watch a movie and find myself sort of tearing up inside, and I'll just get a tear or something, and I've actually cried at movies, which is brilliant. Again, I'm effectively letting go of that blokey machismo stuff that, like I say, you're not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to show your emotions, all supposed to be the British stiff upper lip type of thing. And I'm letting go of that, which, like I say, is it's really great. So I can imagine when I start taking hormones, I'll have the relief, but I'll also, because I've heard many stories where, trans women just like burst into tears for no real reason, and it's like, as an aspie, I never really, I couldn't really do much with emotions. I suppose, sort of to use an analogy, I was always the Spock, Data, Tuvok kind of character. The straight man, as it were. Well, I'm hoping that maybe hormones will unlock the emotional part of me, because I do have them. It's just hard to show them. It's like, what do I do with them? How do I, display them? And it's almost like performance anxiety, really. So yeah, like I say, I'm excited at the idea of it. So one of the other, one of the questions that I was asked during the assessment, there were two biggies, because most of the stuff, I've explained before. But two big ones is, what do I want to do in regarding surgery? And I've effectively said I'm not really sure at this point. It's still open. I'm sort of taking it one hurdle at a time. So once I get hormones done, then I can start thinking about that. And I have considered it. There are options available, and I'll give you the options generally. So you've got, nothing. You do nothing. You just leave it. So it's still boy parts, but just, on the outside you start looking more like a female. Skin gets softer, your muscle shape will change in your face as well, but also obviously breasts, and you'll get fat redistribution on things like your hips and so on. And at this point I'd rather have fat redistribution that moves away from my tummy, where it is at the moment, to my hips and my backside. My backside isn't brilliant anyway. It's like two badly parked Volkswagen Beetles. It's not brilliant, but it's so that's option number one. Option number two is you have something called an orchidectomy, I think it's called, and that's where they remove the testicles. Basically, it's castration, and of course, what it does. So when I start taking hormones, I won't just take estrogen. I will also take anti-androgen, I think it's called. It's a testosterone blocker, because the testosterone is the reason why my hair's a bit thin up here. This is my real hair now. Starting, I haven't gone out in it like this, but I have been on camera like this, or taken selfies or whatever. So and the testosterone is what causes male pattern baldness. I'm really hoping that I've got a lot of dormant hair follicles on the top, and that when I start getting the testosterone blockers and the estrogen, then they might hopefully be reactivated. Wearing a wig is annoying, and especially with in the summer. Imagine wearing a Russian fur hat in a sauna. That's what it feels like. So so that's option number two. Option number three is a cosmetic vagina, basically, and that's basically, it's turned inside out and connected to urethra. So it doesn't work. It doesn't really do anything. You can pee out of it, and that's about it. So cosmetically, you can't really tell. And the third one is a full surgery, which is where they give you something that you can feel. For any guys that might be watching, they take the penis and they cut the bell end and they split it, and that becomes the clitoris. And I remember watching this, a couple of years ago. I watched a YouTube video of what the surgery entailed, and I ended up feeling as green as the curtain behind me. I started to feel rather queasy. I couldn't watch all of it in one sitting. I had to, stop it and watch the rest of it the day after. And and I'd never had that kind of reaction. I've watched videos on blood transplants, in heart bypass surgery, and I was perfectly fine with that. But then again, that was other people. That wasn't me. And so, if you can imagine, I'm looking at that surgery and thinking this could be me. Suddenly becomes a bit more personal, and maybe that's probably the reason why I felt a bit queasy, to say the least. So, so that's, and they turn the shaft inside out, and that's how they make a vagina, as well as, like I say, a clitoris that's made out of the penis, the bell end part, because it's sensitive, and now. I'm asexual, so I'm not really interested in having sex. Like someone penetrating someone, or for that matter, someone penetrating me, is like, no, not for me. I'm pausing because I'm thinking, do I really want to say this? Because it's kind of embarrassing. This is something that we don't talk about publicly, and of course I've got to weigh all these options, and so I may not be sexually active in terms of having sex with anybody, but I still play with myself, shall we say. So it's good for the endorphins, it's good for the brain, and so I do that. And so the idea of not being able to do that again, it'd be a real shame to not be able to do that again. And so, if I had the full surgery, I would be able to feel it, so I would be able to pleasure myself. Like I say, if my foundation wasn't quite so thick, I would be blushing right now. So I'm still, Critical Cripple says it's also not a good decision to make prior to being on hormones for a while. That's quite right. So I'm just taking it one stage at a time, and we'll see what happens. But I'm probably going to go for the latter option. But now another question that I was asked during the assessment. Actually, before I go on with that, there's another reason, and that is for option number 3 and 4. So one of the people I know, a trans woman I know, so she's old now. Old. She's not like at death's door yet, but she's old. And one of the things that she had to realise is that there's going to come a time for her that she could end up in an old people's home or something, and she's not able to clean herself, and so she needs a nurse to help. And that, she didn't want to have a situation where she ended up with some nurse laughing or mocking her, or sort of saying, "I'm not going near that," kind of thing. So, and that made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense to, it's like, there's more to it than just, it looks like it makes me look more like a woman, or, that kind of thing. There's a lot of a lot of baggage that comes, with whichever decision you make. Like everything, there's positives and negatives. The orchidectomy, orchidectomy, okay. The orchidectomy, taking the anti-androgens, the testosterone blockers, like many medications, they have side effects. So by having the orchidectomy, you don't need to take the testosterone blockers anymore because there's nothing to be producing testosterone with. And and one of the other interesting things about taking the testosterone blockers and taking the estrogen hormones is that there are side effects that happens, of like getting the hormones that you get. And I just mean that on a general sense. Women are more likely to get breast cancer because they have the hormones that produce breasts. There's more tissue to get cancerous in, I suppose. And men likely to get prostate cancer. Well, for someone like me, my chances of getting breast cancer will increase, and because of the lack of testosterone, my prostate will like turn into barely anything. It'll just shrink, and so the chances of getting prostate cancer are like tiny. They're practically non-existent. So it's almost like yay, at least I won't need to have a doctor inspecting. I've never had that happen yet. I'd rather it doesn't happen at all. So yeah, that's that's how all that's been going. So the other question that I was asked in the assessment, which was completely unexpected for me, and that was, have you thought about gamete storage? Now, if you've seen enough stuff about the TERFs, they're all obsessed about gametes, X and Y chromosomes and things like that, the ability to make children. And of course, the arguments that they use, that only women can have babies, kind of thing, XY chromosomes. The arguments that they use unravel everything that feminism fought for. That women aren't just, biological entities that can make babies. They're actually people that have a lot more value than bearing and raising children. And so by, trying to sort of, focus on the very, very basics of biology, they're unraveling everything. So they claim they're feminists, but at the same time they're unraveling what it means. It's like destroying it because they want to make a point because they don't like certain people like me. And it's just silly, really. And of course, when you get the TERFs, they obsess about how, you only have to look at simple biology. Well, biology isn't simple. We know biology isn't simple. And so, it's like, let's just think about it in a simple sense. Let's look at mathematics. Okay? Now, yeah, sure, mathematics, if you look at the basics, is, adding, take away, multiplying, and subtracting. Dividing. Sure, if you go to that, but of course you don't get quantum physics out of just that. There's a lot more detail, and that's just mathematics. And of course, another thing is, what might be inside my cells might be X and Y, but what's it between my ears up here? That's also biological as well. So, it's not as simple as just, biology. So I was asked about gamete storage, and I wasn't expecting that at all, because it's like, well, you know, you know, traditionally they haven't helped transgender people, you know, because as soon as you start taking the hormones, I'm going to go sterile. Um, you know, uh, and trans men, it becomes difficult for them to, you know, to also have babies, even if they wish. So, yeah, it's, you know, I was unsurprised. Sorry, I was surprised to get the question because I didn't think they offered that service. But you know, and actually, it was a bit of a scandal. You know, until somewhat recently, because this is a recent change. Because effectively, what was happening was that the NHS was effectively saying that yes, you can become transgender, but you're going to have to be sterilized to do it, which meant that they couldn't have kids. You know, so so I was asked about it, and it's like I don't really know. I haven't thought about it. Didn't think it was available, so it wasn't something I considered. Well, since then I have considered it, and I've decided not to. And it's not just because it'd take another month or 2 or 3 for it, you know, before I can start taking hormones. Because you know it takes a little while for the fertility, you know, place to do all the paperwork so I can provide a sample, shall we say? Um, and of course, you know, I have no idea of what kind of you know, performance anxiety I would go through to try and provide a sample. Um, you know, so but no, you know, even if we ignore that, it's so I had to think about it, and it's like, okay, so I think I would make a good parent. I'm a very moral person. I'm a very patient person. So I think I could make a good parent, but I'm 47 years old. And being asexual, I don't really have any. I don't have a partner. It's actually made my life a lot easier in that way because I've never had any kids or a wife or anything like that. You know, I'm disabled, so I'm not working. And you know, I'll tell you about my mum shortly. But you know, so I can be totally selfish in my transition. I don't have to worry about family or kids or a wife or any of those things. I can be completely selfish in it. I don't have to worry about a job and work colleagues and all those sorts of stresses. So it's so much easier for me. So uh, so I don't have any prospective partner on the horizon. And not only that, of course, being 47, it's a bit old to be starting a family. Let's say I get someone in, you know, a couple of years' time after my transition is, you know, really working. Um, what could I end up, you know, I'd be 50. It's too old to raise a family. And of course, not only that, you know, I prefer women to, you know, if I was to have a partner, I'd prefer to have a woman as a partner. You know, and I mean, I'm not interested in having sex, just someone to kiss and cuddle and stuff like that, you know. Snuggling. Snuggling is nice. Someone to share my life with, because, you know, I basically live on my own. You know, COVID, I've been really quite lonely, and, you know, strangely, when everyone was going online, I spent the last year being much more reclusive, which is weird because I enjoy talking to people. You know, having the Asperger's, I don't go out very much, and having agoraphobia, I don't go out hardly at all. So it's my way, you know, chatting to people on, you know, chit chats or whatever, you know, Discord or Hangouts as they were before. It's the equivalent of going to the pub and hanging around with your mates. I mean, you know, sort of with the agoraphobia, I have more friends that live over 1,000 miles away than live within 10 miles of here, or 100 miles for that matter. Um, so so uh, So if it came to meeting someone, in order to have a family, well, people around 50, they're starting to no longer produce eggs, should we say. So, and it might be too old for them to have, children. And I believe there are more risks to having children later in life than there are to be having them younger. So it's not likely to happen. And also, and I did have one other thought that popped through my mind, and that comes down to my mum. So, unfortunately, my mum disowned me in the March of 2019. So if you haven't already heard this, what happened was, it was coming up Mother's Day. As this was Saturday, Mother's Day would be tomorrow in 2019. It was the end of March. And I phoned up my mum to say, can I come down? I've got a present for you. Can I come down tomorrow? And she sort of made excuses. She was at work, and it's like, well, she finishes work by 4 at the latest, so if I turned up at 5, she'd be in. And then she sort of, she was going to be going to the hospital having surgery because she had a tumour in her thumb. So she was going to, so I'm going to be having that done. I'm scared to death, and then she sort of, and I've had a row with the guy, with someone at work, and I had a row with someone round the corner because the dog pooped on the yard. She cleans it up every time, but and it's like she was just making excuses, and I, and sort of, I was like, well, how about I come down and just, as a guy, because she had no expectation of me turning up like this. I told her that I would turn up as a guy as long as it would, she needed me to. And so, how about come down and just like leave it on the doormat? You don't have to do that. And of course, in my head, I'm thinking, well, I don't have to, but I want to because your mum had got a present and that kind of thing. And of course, bear in mind that I take people at face value. My mum knows this. So I'm taking her at face value. I'm not reading between the lines, which I only sort of realised later, because what she was, when she said you don't have to, what she actually meant was I don't want you to, and I didn't pick that up. So sort of like, well, how about I mail them to you? Oh, well, that's not fair on you, and I don't want to be unfair, she said. And I said, well, you kind of are being. And, because like, all I want to do is go down, give her a present. I mean, if she wants to talk to me but doesn't want to talk about the transition stuff, fine, we'll talk about other stuff. Or I'll just leave it on the doormat and leave, as a guy. But before any of that stuff came out, she went, do you know what, don't bother coming down, just consider me dead and put the phone down. Well, I was raging. I was really angry because, she just told me I should consider her dead. That just, stunned me. And not only that, she just told me that she was going to be going into hospital this, next week. Actually took several weeks after because it got cancelled. But, and it's like, well, the last, imagine, I didn't know whether she's getting, during the surgery where she was going to be put to sleep or where it was going to be done local where she was awake. So the last, if she died on the table, because my mum's got illnesses, she's got angina for a start. If she died on the table, the last thing she would have told me is that I should consider her dead. So I went down, I got on my bike, and it was the last time I wore guy clothes. And I went down, and I went, and she's like, I want you out. I said, no, we're going to talk about this right now. and I shooed the dog off the chair because I'm tall and I didn't want to be like pointing down at her, that kind of thing, because that would make me look aggressive. And I made sure that I kept my voice kind of flat, and I didn't want to intimidate her. If she was alone, I would have gone down the hallway to get my dad, so she didn't feel like she was under attack or anything. And I was just going to confront this problem. It's ironic, really, because when I was a kid, when we had a problem, and usually when the family, when we had a problem in the family, and that problem was usually me, because didn't know I had Asperger's until 2010, so it was undiagnosed. And when I was growing up, the only people who knew Asperger's were people who spoke German, because it hadn't been written into English by then. So that happened at the sort of the late 80s into the 90s kind of period. Well, I left school in 91. So anyway, so I made sure to keep my voice flat, and I told her, I said, you don't get to tell me that I should consider you dead. If you want to consider me dead, that's up to you, but you don't tell me how I have to think. You make decisions for you, not for me. And other bits and bobs were said, and I had to tell her, I said, just because I didn't turn out the way you expected doesn't mean to say you failed as a parent. But if you refuse to accept me for who I am, then you'll have failed as a parent. And she kind of backed up. She was stood up. She went, well, I failed as a parent then. That defiance is the reason why I went down. I learned it from my mum. You don't get to tell me that I consider you dead. Do you see what I mean? It's, and it was bizarre, because effectively I was being the grown up and she was being the child in this case. I just don't want to deal with this thing. Whether she likes it or not, I'm transitioning. She has to learn to accept that. So so finally she started to say something, and I said, stop. Be careful what you say, because I knew she was going to say something to regret. Be careful what you say, because once you've said it, you can't unsay it. You can't take it back. And she said, I'm not going to take it back. I want nothing more to do with you. So I got up and I took a step for the door and I stopped. And my dad must have stood up at the same time because he was sat down. And I went to him. So if you imagine, he's there and my mum's like there. So I put my hands on his shoulder and said, look, I know I'm really related to you through my mum because he's my stepdad. But just because she wants nothing more to do with me doesn't mean to say it's over between us, okay? And he's like, yeah, I know, because I was starting to break down, my voice was breaking. And I headed off to the back door, and she, and I gave a sob. And she said, I'm sorry you're upset, but that's just the way it is. And I turned on and I said, no, you don't get to tell me you're sorry at the same time as you're pushing me out of your life. It's not on, it's not right, and I'm not having it. And I went out the door, closed the door behind me, didn't slam it or anything. And I shouted through the window and I said, I'm not going back to living as I was before. I've been doing so well, and you're not going to take that away from me. And I rode my bike home. I came back the long way, the less busy way, because my mind was still reeling with upset and stuff. And when I got home, I took my clothes off for the last time, threw them in the hallway, slammed them down kind of thing. And as I threw them down, I said to myself, well, I'm not going to need them anymore. And one of the things I like to do, I try to take bad things and turn them into good things, because otherwise they just it's like a cloud sitting over me. And so over the next 3 weeks, I went and took all the guy clothes. Went through my bedroom, got all the guy clothes, lobbed them out the hallway. I live on my own, fortunately. I was walking over them for 3 weeks. The pile getting higher and higher every day, kind of thing, as I went through them. Amazing how much stuff I've got. It's bonkers. And one of the great things is, I'd been wearing clothes like this at home for, over a decade. So I had loads of clothes already. I mean, I got more clothes than most women do. I've got more clothes that don't fit me anymore than most women do. Hopefully, I'll lose weight, and unfortunately, I've got to put on 3.5 stone, which is like nearly 50 pounds. I've put on over COVID period of the last year. Anyway, so I threw it all out in the hallway, and then after 3 weeks, when I got rid of all of it, I split it up into 3 piles, like 2.1. I kept one set of guy clothes, just one set, and I put them up at the top where I couldn't even see them. And it was in case my mum changed her mind, so that I could go down and basically wean her on to the fact that transition's really happening. So I split them into 2 piles. Anything that had any stains or rips or tears, they went to the bin. And anything that had any, that was good, they went to charity. And my best day ever was 3 weeks later. It was a Tuesday. And let me just find it. This isn't the day, but it was what I wore on that day. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm just getting it ready. Where's there it is. Okay, so so what happened was my best day was after 3 weeks, and I took my first bag of guy clothes, big black bag full of guy clothes, to the clothing bank at the supermarket near me. And I looked like this. I was wearing a really fitted shift dress with tights and some 2-inch heels, which aren't really necessary because I'm 6'4", and I got to be careful with things like that, because doors, the average size door in the UK is 6'6", as you can see from the door behind me. So I had to be a bit careful, and so I'm wearing this really fitted shift dress. And the thing about a dress like this, physically they're not comfortable, but mentally they are comfortable for me, because it makes me feel really feminine. It brings out the girliness in me, as it were. And so and also I'm wearing some what I call Spanx. They're basically they're underwear that sort of pulls your tummy in. They're like, almost like neoprene. It's really, really constrictive and tight, and well, they're great for tucking, because a dress like this, there's no room, and I didn't want anyone seeing like between where my legs are. I didn't want anyone seeing any what I jokingly refer to as boy bumps. So I was so what happened was I ended up walking through the indoor market, the town where I live, and there were 2 places I wanted to go to: the makeup place and the haberdashery place I wanted to go to. And I'm walking, and another thing with heels, and they were chunky heels. They weren't like stiletto ones. They were like D-shaped heel, chunky, and they're not too tight or too high. They are a bit too small. So I was walking. So they change your body shape a bit. Heels do. They kind of like lift your bottom up a little bit almost, and you got to walk sort of 1 foot in front of the other as well. So I'm walking through the indoor market, my feet clip-clopping away, and I'm feeling really good about myself. I'm moving away from the guy past. I'm moving forward to the girly future. And in my head, I'm thinking to myself, I hope I'm tucked tight and no one can tell. I'm sure I am. But you know what? Even if they can tell, I don't care. I'm being true to myself. I'm being me. And no one can tell me I can't live like this or be like this or feel like this. And after I was done, I decided, do you know what? I'm gonna go and buy my where is it? No. I've got the picture. There we go. So after I was done, the two places I wanted to go to, I decided, you know what, I'm going to treat myself for feeling this good. So I went and bought myself some fresh flowers, and I do that for myself. At first, it was every month, but actually, I do it. I do it every fortnight now, and so these are the ones. They're kind of dying now. You can see, but I'll be getting new ones on Wednesday. So and by the way, girls, if you ever have flowers, just rotate them every day for a different look. So yeah, it's a nice little thing that I do. And actually, there's something else I should mention since I'm on the topic of flowers, and I just need to find the picture. I had a lovely thing happen for Valentine's Day, and someone was so kind, someone of the squirrel persuasion. I suddenly got these on Valentine's Day, and it's just like, oh, someone's sent me flowers, and it was just so lovely. Such a wonderful surprise to have it happen. So it's like, oh, I mean, I spent the next month effectively, because they sat up there, because I had my normal flowers and I didn't special Valentine's flowers, and like I say, it was a friendship gesture, and it was just wanted you to know that you are loved, even if it's just through a screen. And it's like, oh, and I had all for days and days and days, just like, oh, because buying flowers for yourself is one thing, having someone buy flowers for you, that's really special. So like I say, it was just, it was lovely to have that happen. So so I need to find another picture now. So when so that was my best day, because I was being true to myself, and that was what was important, because no matter what, it's interesting, because when my mum disowned me, I had no other reason to wear guy clothes ever again, and I have never worn guy clothes since. I mean, the nearest I've worn to any guy clothes is I got a T-shirt from a trans charity called Sparkle at the Manchester Pride in 2019, and I used that when I was doing some messy stuff. But like I say, it was it was my life, weirdly, and as bizarre as this might seem, my mum disowning me actually, helped me, because I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't scared of saying the wrong thing, because several times before she finally decided she didn't want anything to do with me, I realised that, that I was walking on eggshells. I was worried, I'd said something and she'd found offence for no reason, kind of thing. And so, it's actually made my life easier, because, like I say, I don't have to worry about anybody else during my transition now. I only have to worry about myself and how I feel and how I'm coping and so on. And having other people's baggage to deal with, is an extra ball to juggle that I really could do without. And of course, and the reason why it made my life easier is because I can't do anything now. If my mother ever decides she wants a relationship with me, she's got to make the first move. If I do anything, then that could be an excuse for me to push me away again. And so, the ball is 100% in her court. Now, of course, it would be easy just to say, oh, well, that's that. But one of the things that I did do, I've spoken to my dad several times. But one of the things I did, I told him that, that if she ever changes her mind and she wishes, because one of the things that can happen in families that there's a row of some kind and two parties go separate ways, and then they decide, maybe I was a bit of a jerk, or maybe I could have done better, or even if it's just like, they are who they are, and I'll just have to deal with that. They change their minds, they reconcile their feelings about it, but they don't want to get in contact because they don't want to open old wounds. They don't want to upset the other person. And of course, they'll have to reflect on their own behaviour as well. So, so I made sure to tell my dad that, she's closed the door on me. I haven't closed the door on her. So if she ever has a change of feelings about it, a change of opinion, she wants to reconcile, I'll be waiting. I'm still here. But I can't go to her because she could just use it to reject me. And, so it's better to just, let her be, let her figure it out. I hope that, I hope it, her reluctance isn't so final that the next time I see her is when she's dead. Or next time, I have anything to do with her, it's a funeral. If I'm allowed to go at all, of course. I'm sure I would be, but, who knows. So, yeah, it's a real shame, but it is what it is. And, I've just got to deal with it. But anyway, so at that day where I bought the flowers for me, that was my best day. And then 2 days later, I again, it was a rainy week, so Wednesday was raining, and then on Thursday afternoon it got brighter, and so I spent about an hour or so on my bicycle going backwards and forwards to the clothing bank with 5 more bags, because I could only get 1 bag in the basket. Even then it was a bit wobbly. And in the trips backwards and forwards, which is about maybe a quarter of a mile each way, in my head I had the song by M People going through my head, which is "Search for the hero inside yourself." Search for the secret you hide, and then you'll have the key to your life. And so, and I posted on Twitter a picture that I took that day. It was the, satisfied that, it's a big step getting rid of all my guy clothes, except for that one set which I kept for a year. And so I posted a picture, a selfie of me, that day. And one of my friends, she said, she said I looked so radiant. And I thought, oh, that was a nice thing to say. So that's one of my favourite little memories there. And so, yeah, it's been, it was nice to have that. So, so one of the other things that's worth mentioning as well is that, as well as the nonsense you get on Twitter with TERFs and so on, you also get negative shit that happens in real life as well. And I've had a bit of negative attention here and there. Now, as an Aspie, let me just take a drink. As an Aspie, I need to find coping strategies with how to deal with life, how to deal with people. And so one of the things that I've created is a coping strategy to deal with negative shit that happens. So I'll give you some examples and then show the positive stuff, because I count the positives and sort of the negatives. Now, so I've got this points-based system. And just bear in mind, this is conceptual. I'm not literally like writing down points every day or anything. So I'm going to go through the negatives and then go through the positives, or how to find the positives. So, so first of all, you've got the benign stuff, the stuff that people don't even realise they do. So when you're walking, let's say walking through a mall or something like that, if you've got someone coming in from a different angle, you're constantly looking around at things, at people. You look them in the face to get an idea of what they're doing and what they're going, and so on. So, so what happens is you got someone that's coming from the side. Well, you take a look at them to ascertain where they're going and what they're doing. So should I accelerate or decelerate, change a bit left or right, so we don't bump into each other? Well, as a part of that sort of snapshot looks at people, I've seen people, sort of walking towards me, and they do the quick look at me, and then you can almost see it like, they end up having to do a double take. They take a second look because something didn't look right, and that's when that's why she's so tall, is the knowing nod or the goofy grin. There's quite a lot of ambulances or police cars or possibly fire engines. The hill's been on fire lately. Anyway, that's really loud. Wow. Anyway, so April, I can't send her a Mother's Day card. Again, it could be something she uses to, she uses to dig her heels in, rip it up, chuck it in the bin. She could do that. So I've just got to, leave it to her. I sent a Christmas card. Last year I didn't even sign it. This year I did sign it, but, Anyway. So the benign stuff, knowing nod, goofy grin. Then I'll get the more obvious stuff. So you get a couple of lads, one nudges the other. Look, 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 look. Kind of thing. Or I'll get a group of people go by and I'll hear, did you see that or them? And then you get laughter. Because they all did. Or the worst one that I've had so far is a chav family who walk by, like trailer trash family, I suppose you could say, if you're American. Family go by, and one of them goes, oh, there's another she, he, loudly as I go by. Really loud and blatant, And it's like, I look around to do the sort of, really face? And that's when their little kid, who was about 5, shouts, you're a man! I mean, they couldn't even wait until I was out of earshot, So, that's the kind of negative stuff. Now, I need to contrast that with the positive stuff. So, here's my coping strategy. So I'm walking down the street, and again, it's this points-based system. So I'm walking down the street, someone's walking towards me. A bit harder to do now because of masks and everything, but anyway, so she's walking towards me. She looks at me, I smile, she smiles back. There's a point. I go to Boots, the cosmetic counters at Boots, in Manchester, or where I live. So one of them sort of says, oh, your eye makeup's looking nice today, Laura. Well, they're experts, so there's a couple 100 points, Another one will be like, I post a picture on Twitter or to a friend, and it's like, oh my god, you look stunning today, Laura. Well, that's like a 500 points of gush right there. Really makes you feel good. Or one of the best ones was my best one really has been my bank. One of the cashier ladies at the bank, I noticed she started calling me Laura. She never used to call me my guy name, so she was trying to make me feel comfortable. I appreciate that. So I said, "Thank you very much. I really appreciate it." She went, "Oh, you're quite welcome, dear. You're looking nice today." I said, "Oh, I'm not too bad at makeup and clothes." She went, "No, no, no. You look beautiful. You tell a man he's handsome. You tell a woman she's beautiful. To tell a trans woman she's beautiful, that means a lot." So that was like 1,000 points that day. So if you can imagine, I've got 8,000 points of positive energy, and I get to, oh, there's another she loudly. I might lose a couple of points because I feel shitty for a couple of moments, but I can take an objective step back and say, yeah, but look, you got 7,800 points, 7,800 points of positive energy. The world is better than it is bad. And that's how I get by. And the thing about it is, you can do this you can do this for your general life. Here in the UK, we've got COVID going on, Brexit uncertainty. Who knows what's going to happen? Then you've also got people getting shot and stabbed and run over by cars and, all sorts of other things. So there's a lot of negative stuff that goes on. But at the same time, people love each other. Work colleagues or friends and family, couples that kiss each other goodnight or whatever, or their children. There's so many wonderful things that happen all the time, and we just don't really think to credit it in our lives. And if COVID has taught us one thing, it's how interconnected we are. Because, it's amazing how much people realise that, how much they took for granted. That the idea of just like going out to the pub or going to watch a movie or, just going to the shops, when we had to keep apart thanks to lockdowns and wearing masks and social distancing and all that. In my life it didn't make much difference because, not going out because of, like the COVID restrictions of not going out because of lockdown, and when you did, you have to wear a mask and keep away from people. Well, that's like agoraphobia for me. It was welcome to my life. So it didn't really make much difference. In fact, the annoying part is that, there were lots of people that have busy lives and they would squeeze things in, and suddenly they've got like loads of times to do their railway modelling or whatever. And me, I've managed to do just about the same as the rest of the time, which is not enough. So I spend too much time on Twitter or, other things, playing video games and that. So, yeah. Now, about my points thing, I did have a weird thing happen. A rather negative thing, but it's interesting. I tried to take negative things and turn them into positive things. One of the things that happened was okay, Sarah G, I'm just looking. Recently saw a trans man in the doctor's office. She had the most beautiful legs. You've sort of mixed your pronouns there, so I don't know if this was a trans woman, so someone who, like me, or whether it's a female to male who had good-looking legs. I'm not sure. Watch out for those pronouns. That's not me telling you off, it's just raising awareness. Anyway, so I had a weird thing happen to me, and so I went into town. I was less than a month into my transition. This was the 31st of January 2019. I started living this every day, all day, with the exception of a couple of times I went to visit my mum until the end of March. But I was going out like this all the time, every time, since December, and, outwardly declared it to the internet and on my YouTube channel here, and, on Facebook and on Twitter and everything. You know, I came out publicly in the middle, of January. So less than a month into my full-time transition, I had a weird guy proposition me for sex. I mean, the the stuff that happened somewhat a month or so ago with Sever Everard going missing and ended up being killed by a cop, allegedly. And there were like protests about, this is the kind of shit that women go through all the time, that they can't even walk the street without being abducted. And like, propositioned on the street and people stalking them and, things like that. So, and weirdly it turned into a Me Too. That you'd think that someone like me wouldn't have things like that happen to. But no, I didn't expect it. It came out of the blue. Because what happened was there was a guy walking towards me. I'd just paid my council tax, walking up the street, guy walking towards me, and he suddenly jumped to the side in a kind of weird, like, ugh, kind of a weird, elaborate way. And I was like, what did you jump for? And he said, I didn't. I was on the phone. I said, you did? You just jumped to the side? He said, no. And it quickly dawned on me, because he was a black guy, that English wasn't his first language. And that, because there was a bit more said than that, but, I realised that English wasn't his first language. And what I was saying wasn't what he thought I was saying. Because what he thought I was saying, that he was going to jump and attack me, not jump to the side, which is what I meant. And that's how we use the language here. So, so with that confusion out the way, he said, hey, do you want to go and get a drink? With me. And I went, oh, I'm all right, thank you. I've got stuff to do, but thanks anyway. And he said, like, really? Because I've never met anyone like you before. I was like, well, just a trans woman. And it's like, yeah, let's go and get a drink, or have something to eat. Or, you know what, come around my place, I'll meet you something to eat. Well, of course, women, you don't do that. That's how bad things happen. I might usually have said that's how you get yourself into trouble, but, it's not really. But you don't do things like, I mean, let's say I was up for some action, and, some guy offers to make me dinner at his place. Well, let's say I was up for that, and, he picks up the phone, he's on the walk over, and he picks up the phone, he's talking to someone in a funny language. And then, you're at his place, he's making dinner, you're chatting away. And next thing you know, knock on the door. And that's when his 4 friends turn up. At which point, saying no, bit of a problem. I'd certainly try. But it didn't go anywhere like that, So I was like, yeah, come over my place, I'll make you something to eat. And then he leant closer and said, and maybe you can suck my... He did say the word. And I was like, I was amazed. I was like, what? In my head it's like, what? You creepy guy kind of thing. And so I used the infamous, and I was expecting to have a couple of years before I said this, at least. I sort of raised my head and said, I'm sorry, I'm not that kind of girl, and walked off. And after about 3 steps, I checked over his shoulder, made sure he wasn't following me, because then there would be problems. And I know all the weak spots. And because I've not got hormones yet, I'm just as strong as a guy. So, and it was like, what a creep. I mean, I ended up basically having a Me Too moment there. And I'm trans. I'm 6'4". I don't pass that brilliantly so far. Hoping I will do in the future. So it was astounding. Well, what do I do in my trans coping strategy? A part of me was flattered. If I was up for some action, being trans isn't a barrier. So a part of me was flattered by that. But it was also dwarfed by the fact that he was such a creep. So I basically gave myself 50 positive points and 150 negative points because he was a creepy person. And an interesting story to tell. So, so that's basically how things have been going. I've been doing, really well. Let's have a look, because I'm looking at my Oh, yes, I should tell you this one. Um, so, um, so in August, sorry, wait a minute. Yeah, in August 2019, I went to Manchester to watch Pride. I always go, and one of the things that I do is, I dress up a little bit more elaborately. But one of the things I do is I, I like to stand outside the Church of Scientology because they don't like people like me. They don't like mental illness and things like that either. So I like the idea of basically having my back to them while I enjoy the show. And so I went, and the previous year I went with my friend Alice, but this year I went on my own because she wasn't available. She lives in the Netherlands, so it's a bit far for her to go. I did have someone else I planned to meet, but she didn't turn up. But she had other things that she had to do apparently, and so this was me that day, and again a little bit more elaborate, red polka dot dress, with a white cardigan and red shoes. And so I was, I'm waiting, for the first float to come around the corner. And just when you hear the music, it comes around. There was a bunch of TERFs that decided that they were going to crash the party. So they did a protest. So they all basically filtered out and blocked the road. And they were there for like 20 minutes at least before the police told them that either to move along or they'd arrest them. And they were eventually allowed to march slowly. So they did it at like a slow walking place. I've seen funerals that go quicker. And the problem is they placed the police and the organisers in a tough position because these were lesbian ladies. And so you can imagine the claims of like the what's it if the police challenge them, oh well, they're going after them because they're lesbians on LGBT friendly day, on Pride Day, when the reality is that they're basically causing a disruption, and they told them that they had to move along. So so they allowed them to march, and they sort of went down the road and around the corner. As a result, it kept sort of stopping and starting because they were going slow. So people would move at walking pace, and then they'd catch up and they'd have to slow down. It was so annoying. And like just as you're starting to avoid, thinking, yay, this is all good and everything, you enjoy it, and then suddenly they stop again. It reminds you about the bloody TERFs. So now, as the TERFs went by, I kind of confronted them. Not in a terrible sense. As they went by, I just gave them the down thumb kind of thing. And one of them, said, you can't be a lesbian. I said, I'm asexual. I can't. You're right. Women don't have penises. I said, I'm working on that. You can have mine when I'm done with it. And she just told me to F off. So that upset her, I think, because she did look angry with me for that. So what happened was, there's the Sparkle group, and like I say, they're a transgender charity. They have a thing they do in Manchester every year, which I've been to, and they stopped in front of me, and I took the opportunity, because there weren't any barriers, to go out and speak to them, and I just said, sorry you're having to wait like this. It's because a bunch of TERFs crashed the party. Did they? Oh, they're really the worst. I said, yeah, but I kind of give them a hard time. I give them a thumbs down and that kind of thing. Did you? Yeah. Come and march with us, she said. They said, and it's like, really? Yeah. So I ended up taking part in Manchester Pride in 2019, and it was amazing. I mean, and I've I wrote this down when I got home because what I've written is, as I write this, I'm feeling rather emotional because it was the most amazing thing I've ever felt as a trans woman. I stuck out because everyone else in the Sparkle group, because they were wearing those grey t-shirts with "trans is not a choice, transphobia is," and there was I wearing a bright red polka dot dress. I'm waving a flag, waving to the crowd, thousands of happy people cheering the support for us and the cause we were championing. At least 4 times I had to dab my tears with tears from my eyes because I was close to bursting into tears of joy. Some people noticed and cheered again. My heart was bursting with pride in myself and thankfulness for the support I was receiving. I'm starting to feel teary just thinking about this now. I've got tears running down my face just typing this out as I recall it. I had people shout out to me how they loved my outfit, blowing kisses my way, all sorts of ways to express their love and support. My trans coping strategy went on positive overload, a genuine positive vibe lottery win. Even those words can't express how wonderful I felt. So that was funny. And there was another aspect. So afterwards, so I'm into model trains, and one of the things that you can buy is like bits of plastic tube that are made for doing model work, but they're expensive. You'll pay like £1.20 for a tube about that long. Well, one of the things that they do at Pride, they end up giving loads of flags to people to wave and stuff like that for different groups and causes and so on. And even, organisations such as supermarkets or airline companies, the airline company doesn't exist anymore, Thomas Cook. But as a result, loads of those tubes were being given away for free. And when it all finishes, people are just terrible. They just chuck them on the floor. So all of the floor, they got this really, really amazing system at the end of Pride. That as the last float goes along, you've got the guys behind them taking the barriers away and cleaning up the streets as they go, so following the parade with the cleaning lorries and so on. Well, I basically went chasing up the road to try and pick up all these spare bits of plastic because I could use them for model work. So it made sense. But anyway, with a load of them in my bag, I'm now, happy with that. And I ended up chatting to a trans man outside a cafe. And he noticed that there was a bunch of street preachers who'd come specially to hate on the trans people. The LGBT people. Because, of course, that's what they do. They hate LGBT people. Those people. I don't mean all religious people or all Christians for that matter, but there are certainly the noisy, bigoted Christians who do hate LGBT people. And I always find it interesting how they are so obsessed about LGBT people, but Jesus said absolutely nothing about LGBT people at all, but he had loads to say about adultery, and you don't see them hanging around divorce court, do you? So what happened was, since they, and by the way, taking part in Pride, went around a corner, and then off to one side there was about 8 or 10 of them, with megaphones, couldn't hear a damn thing they were saying because the crowd were all cheering their support. So, it was like 7 deep crowd cheering their support. It was amazing to see and to feel as well, of course. Excuse me. So, as someone who's an atheist and has justifications for why I don't believe, I decided that I would give them a taste of their own medicine. I'd go in there and challenge them on their belief, because if they got the right to come and attack trans people, there's no reason why I can't challenge them on their belief and why I think it's wrong and stuff like that. And I'd already had a taste of this. I'm going to jump back a little bit, but I'd already had a taste of this about a month before, because so every now and again I will take part in something called Critical Mass. It's a bike ride that happens in Manchester every year, and not only that, I've got a beautiful new bike that I bought. This is it. It's a gorgeous new baby pink bike. I've added the flowers since, but everything and the basket on the back as well, which is just cable tied on, so I can lift it up and hook on some panniers for if I need to bring some big stuff home. And by the way, I didn't go out of my way to buy a pink bike, because I'm tall. I needed something with a step-through frame, and I needed something that was big. And not only that, because I'm worried about boy bumps, as I mentioned before, I wear skirts and dresses all the time now. Mostly dresses because they're continual, and because I'm tall, I've got a long torso, and the distance between a waistband and a top finishing and the skirt starting is usually only about an inch or two. And if I raise anything on a high shelf, suddenly I'm showing off my tummy, and I don't want to do that. So dresses work because they're more continuous. Anyway, so I wear skirts and dresses all the time. So therefore, lifting my leg over a bicycle, bar, I didn't really want to do that. So I went and bought this new bike. So like I say, needed something with a big frame because I'm tall. I needed something with gears because, unlike Amsterdam, Manchester isn't flat. And I needed something that didn't cost £400 or more, which is what the price of most bikes of this style cost. And I couldn't afford that kind of money. So, but I found this for £180 in Argos, and it was £180. And it was a good bargain. It was a good, nice, solid bike. I've had no problems with it at all. Most expensive bike I've ever bought, in fact. I've had more expensive ones, but they were bought as presents for Christmas or something like that. So, but yeah, it's a gorgeous bike. And I've had so many women say to me, "Oh my gosh, I love your bike. It's so cute," And I did have. You remember I was saying about the Imposter Syndrome thing? I did have a little bit of a sort of, second guessing myself, because it's like, am I going too far? Am I being too girly? Because I don't want to be a parody of what a guy, because effectively I spent 40 odd years as a guy. I didn't want to be a parody of what I suppose a guy thought women are like. So I'm just expressing who I am, I suppose, and the bike does that. And it just occurred to me, it's like, well, wait a second. If we look at, the spectrum of women, you've got everything from from tomboys to really girly girls. Is there any reason why I can't be, sort of up here with the girly girls? No, of course not. So there's nothing wrong with having a pink bike. It really, really isn't. And one of the other problems that I had when I first got that bike, again, more negative stuff. This is before I created my coping strategy. I had an instance where I was going up a hill I just got the bike. It had been delivered on Wednesday. I'd built it by Thursday, and put it all together. And then, but it was rainy all week. And it wasn't until Sunday that the sun came out for a short time, and I took the opportunity to nip up to the park and take some photos of myself with it. Where are they? There we go. So yeah, I went and took some photos of myself with my new bike. I even painted the helmet to go with it, because the problem is trying to find a helmet that's big enough for me, a women's helmet that's big enough for me. very, very difficult. And there's no shape difference. They all look the same. So I just painted the blue one that I had with pink. That's my look. I've got a pink bike face, goofing around a bit. So yeah, I was happy with that. So so what happened was, well, on the ride up there, I'm heading up a hill, approaching the traffic lights, and as a car comes down, and I see them looking at me weird. And so, well, by the time I get to the top of the hill and stop at the traffic lights, this car has done a U-turn, followed me back up the road, and is then, sort of beeping at me like, look, laughing and, mocking me. And I did something that annoyed me. I basically turned around and I gave him the middle finger. And that upset me. And the reason why it upset me wasn't just that I had someone mocking me or whatever. It's because when something like that happens, the adrenaline goes. And when the adrenaline goes, it brings the testosterone that's natural in my body with it. And what it did was it put me in a battling mentality. And I tried to fight against it as much as I could, but all I did was look at them and just give them the finger. And then I turned around to ignore them and hope they didn't push into me or something. And like I say, but it upset me because the manly part of me came out, and that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. So having it dragged out of me really upset me. And on the way home, I had another person who sort of looked at me weird, approaching some lights. And I moved to the front where there's a bike box at the front. And they changed lanes so they could get next to me so they could point and jeer at me. And again, I'm like, what? That kind of thing. And I got them on the video camera. And when I got home, I called the police because, it was, that was aggressive driving in my opinion. It was harassing me for riding a bike. I wasn't even thinking about the trans stuff. It was just, and it's like, have a word with them, remind them that this is not appropriate kind of thing to do. Send them a letter, who knows, right? So, but the lady who took the call, she sort of basically classed as a hate crime because I was trans, and like within 4 hours, they had a police officer come and visit and look at the video footage, and and I said, look, I don't need anything big doing about it, just have a word and tell them that this isn't appropriate behaviour for anyone, let alone trans women. And what was really weird about it, kind of coping strategy side, it actually brought gender euphoria for me. Sort of the validation kind of thing. So, I'll explain gender dysphoria and then euphoria. So, under the makeup, I'm still exactly the same as I was 5 years ago. I look like a guy still. And that's who I see in the morning when I wake up. So I'll get up in the morning wearing, sort of flannel nightgown. I'll go to the loo. I'll turn around to wash my hands, and there's the mirror. And what I see is a guy's head on a girl's body, because of the nightgown. And my head says, no, that's not me. And weirdly, I've had more dysphoria thanks to, when I decided I was going to transition than I used to before. Because before, it was one of those unreachable goals. Whereas now, it's something that I'm doing, and therefore everything reminds me of it, which is annoying. So now when I, so generally I avoid looking in the mirror, unless I'm wearing makeup and stuff, because then, so what happens is I'll put on the makeup, I've got my makeup mirror, and I'll do all the makeup and all that kind of stuff like I did earlier. And then when I'm done, I'll go to the bathroom with the wig, and that's when I put that on. And now the mirror's telling me who I am. It's a much closer approximation of who I am. So now the mirror's telling me the truth of who I am, and that's when I get the euphoria. Yes, that's me. As opposed to earlier, which was, no, that's not me. That's not my reflection. That's some other person almost. So, you know, that's that's dysphoria, euphoria. Well, when I had this police officer turn up, I'm 6'4". So I'm taller than most men, let alone most women. So when I had this police officer turn up, who was about 2 inches or so taller than me, and he was quite stocky, hunky, I suppose you could even say. I don't really think about guys like that, but he was muscly and all that kind of stuff. And also with all the police gear, stab vest, drunk, you know, um, uh, you know, handcuffs and all the bits that they have, radio and so on. With all that stuff, and me being a victim, it made me feel small and more girly, you know. So that kind of brought a weird euphoria, which was a bit strange for me. It was unexpected. So, so anyway, back to what I was talking about the street preacher thing. So what happened was in July of 2019, I was taking part in this critical mass thing, which is a bike ride that happens in many cities all over the world. Started off in San Francisco, but there's one in Manchester. I don't know how they've been doing with COVID, but I'm sure they'll all be starting up soon because most people are getting vaccinated now. And so, and what we do is we meet up at the Central Library in Manchester, and at about sort of 6:30, we then all ride off, in a big convoy, riding around the city slowly. And basically, it's a sort of mini protest and sort of fun social thing all in one, because the protest is, hey, we're road users too. And the way we work is, the people at the front just go wherever they want to, and usually we end up winding our way to a pub, and at which point people either separate or go to the pub, and then so I was going to be taking part in one of those that day, and I wore a really cute outfit, but it was like a really summery one. And let's see, where is it? There you go. So I wore this. Now this was a bit of a turning point for me, because a dress like that, as I got a V back as well. A dress like that, it's a bit short, and my dysphoria kind of, I look at it and I still see manly arms, on the shoulders and that kind of thing. So wearing a sleeveless dress outside publicly, I'd done it a couple of days before, and then I wore it again to Manchester a couple of days later, and it was like, it was quite a big thing to wear that. So the first day I got comfortable with it, and then it's like, you know what, I'm going to really push the boat out and I'm going to go to Manchester. So I went to Boots, chatted with some people as I normally do, and then I was walking up the pedestrianised street, and there was this street preacher, and when he caught sight of me, he said, "And men who want to dress like women." And it's like, you're targeting me, are you? Okay, fine, fair enough. I'm up for that. You're throwing down the gauntlet, brilliant. I'm going to take that gauntlet, stick it up the where the sun doesn't shine, give it a twist, because often I know the Bible better than those do. So and I'm sort of reading off some in here. So I debated him fearlessly without swearing or anything like that, because I'm knowledgeable with the Bible. And of course the idea is I've got my atheist arguments, which I have to justify my position and negate his. And ended up with about 30 to 40 people around us watching us, because at the start he was just shouting to nobody in particular, and with his headset and a amplifier at his feet, whereas so basically just had it out, and gradually people started to gather up, so and of course I was making the people laugh as he avoided my statements and things. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So one of them, I asked him whether slavery is wrong, and he said, yes, slavery is wrong. And so I said, well, that's not what your Bible said. It doesn't. I said, it does. Exodus 21, read it. Read it out to us. Go on, read it out for us. Okay, he says, I will. So he flicks the pages. He gets to the right page. He skims it. He said, I'm not reading all that. What do you mean it's not even a page? Don't worry, I said to everybody. I've got that bit memorised. If a man goes in alone, he leaves alone. If he goes in with his wife leaves with him. But on the seventh year, but if his master buys him a wife, on the seventh year, he gets to go free, but she doesn't, because women. But he can go with his master to the door or the doorpost of the temple and say, I love my master, I love my wife, I love my children, and I do not want to go free, and they stick a hole in his ear, and then he becomes his master's property forever. And the crowd were aghast. They never heard that bit before. Like I say, so that was sort of an interesting. And of course, he wanted to divert to something else quite quickly. And other people were sort of chit-chatting as well. It wasn't all me and him. Other people were. There were some Muslim guys that were challenging because, of course, for them, Jesus is a prophet, not the Son of God. The second one, and this was my favourite one, was he said I was guilty of a sexual sin. And I said, I'm asexual. I'm still a virgin. I'm not had sex. I've never had sex, not interested in having sex. How can I possibly be committing a sexual sin when I'm literally not having sex? And you could see his eyes buffer as he realised, shit, I don't normally get anyone saying that to me. And so he ended up, he just raised his arm and said, we're all sinners to God. And I said to the people around, I said, did you notice his avoidance of my question? And everybody laughed at his avoidance. Because he had no answer to that. The best he could do was say, we're all sinners. He couldn't actually say how I was committing a sexual sin. We just all are sinners, you see. So that was kind of funny. Well, and there was a girl next to me, and when he was talking to someone else, she said, this is hate speech, I should phone the police because it's illegal, and it kind of is. And I said, no, don't. Think about what's going on now. 20 minutes ago, he was shouting in the street and no one was paying attention to him. And now all these people can hear how awful he is and how awful his belief system is. Now, that doesn't mean for all Christians, I just mean for his. They can see how he's a horrible, hateful person. His beliefs in his God is utterly hateful in reality, the contrast of what he was, sort of sugarcoating before, the happy Jesus loves you type stuff. No, now it's God hates you stuff. So he was doing the exact opposite of what he was intending to do. He's not drawing people towards his belief, he's repelling everyone from it. And so, a little while later, I had to detach from this because the bike ride thing was going to be going on soon. So I backed out. I said, thank you very much. I enjoyed that. And it was a great moment for me because, before doing it as a guy, I could do. But this was the first time I'd done it like this as a woman. So, it was a big moment. And one of the nice things about it, I had this young girl, probably about 16 or so. She nudged her way through the crowd and she said, you are amazing. Can I give you a hug? I said, oh, that was wonderful. And also there was a young trans boy. He was about 15 or something like that, I think he said. And I mean, he looked really good for it. He was giving his arguments as well. And afterward, as I detached, he said, "Hey, a bunch of us are going to the pub. Do you want to join us? Maybe he was a bit older than that. Anyway, we're going off to get a drink. Do you want to join us?" I said, "Oh, I'd love to, but I've got something to do. But thanks anyway." And so I ended up shaking hands with him, and his handshake was a bit feeble, a bit girly, if you know what I mean. And so I said, tell you what. That wasn't a very manly handshake. So I'm gonna hand over the baton. I'm gonna give you my guyness, the last of my guyness. I'm gonna show you how to give a blokey handshake. You can take it away and do what you want with it. And so I gave him a manly handshake, showed him how to do it. A bit of squeeze, but not too much. And not so much a shaky hands, but just like a, almost like a flick, a whip kind of effect, a sort of flick, a good head down, and and in a way, I felt like I was handing the baton over to this young guy, and he's going to be handshaking, like a man. uh, you know, it was just really nice of me getting rid of another little bit of guyness and giving it away. It's almost like the idea of, wouldn't it be great if organ transplant was a bit easier, so I could just swap bodies, swap organs with oh, you're a trans man and you want to be you're a trans man and you'd like to have a penis, you can have mine and I'll have what you've got. That would be great, but that's not real. So but and the other thing that was nice, I was even able to shout to the crowd with my slightly more softer feminine voice compared to the harder male voice I'd had before, and I enjoyed the ride as well. So but the fun one was, as I mentioned, I took part in Pride, and then there were these religious bigots they'd done their bigotry for the day, and they were having some tea or whatever it was before they went home. And so I decided I went and challenged them, and I fiercely debated them in much the same way as they had the other one, contrasting about faith and all those sorts of bits and bobs. But there was one guy, the main guy I was talking to, and he kept calling me sir. And I asked him not to, but he said he couldn't because I was a man. I can't because that's what you are. And I said, no, you're choosing to call me that. You don't have to. You're choosing to. You're using your free will, and it's offensive. So stop. But after 3 times, because he ignored me, after 3 times I said, right, call me sir. I said, right, okay, the next time you call me sir, I'm going to call you something you don't want me to call you. I'm going to call you arsehole. Now, so from now on, it is in your hands whether I have to call you that or not. Well, after 15 times of me calling him arsehole, he got annoyed at me and said I was being abusive. And I said, yeah, I'm sorry, I told you the rules. It was in your hands whether I had to call you that or not. But now you've got a problem with it. It was okay when you were dealing the offence to me by calling me sir, but when I call you arsehole, that's when you've got a problem. Have you ever read Matthew 7? That's the one about hypocrisy. And again, they really don't like it when you slap them in the face with their own book. And he knows he was deliberately trying to be offensive to me, but got pissy when I was offensive back. And the only reason I was offensive back was because every time he called me sir, I sort of said, well, that's not true, arsehole, because yada 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 yada. And also at the end, it was funny, after explaining that his beliefs were awful when he tried to justify slavery and genocide, he said, you came to us, we didn't come to you. And based upon his accent, I said, you came from Liverpool. You came from a completely different city just to abuse LGBT people today. How's that Matthew 7 working for you again? Again, it gave me strength, that I could, still have my atheism kind of, contrasting his. And it's only because he went out of his way to be a jerk to people. I don't like, when I come across Christian people all the time, I don't go out of my way to try to, slam their religious belief, and say how mine's better or whatever. I don't feel I need to, because most of the people, to be honest, they don't obey most of what the Bible says anyway. So it's effectively, the Bible is a little bit of a book of multiple choice, that people wrap their own how they feel and how they believe about things around what they already believe. So, back in the day when slavery was still a thing, you had people to try to justify slavery because it says so in the Bible. We shouldn't change this system and get rid of slavery because the Bible says it's okay, there's rules for it. Or, for example, let's use a more simple example, the death penalty. People who want the death penalty will say, it says in the Bible, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And then, you're getting someone else that says, yeah, but if you look at the Bible, it says forgive people, and so on. So people will use the Bible to, as a foundation for what they already believe. They already wanted, the structure, the building that, I suppose the church in which they built upon that foundation to be that fitted around their sentiments anyway. That it's okay that black people aren't bad people because they're black, as the Mormons used to believe, until they discovered that they wouldn't be tax exempt and it'd be illegal for them to do such things when it became against the law in the 60s, or was it the early 70s? So yeah, those are the kind of things that have happened. The last thing that I'm gonna mention, and it's a sad thing, but it's unfortunate. For the December, for Christmas 2020 into 2019 into 2021 time, it was I couldn't go to my mum. Normally I would just nip down the road to my mum, she lives 2 miles away, and spend the day with family, but obviously my mum disowned me, so I can't do that. So I went down to Plymouth to visit a friend, and I spent Christmas there and came back before New Year because I live high up in a block of flats, and I can see most of Manchester from here. So the New Year fireworks are just phenomenal, just everywhere. It's fantastic. But this Christmas that we've just had with COVID, I really couldn't go. Yes, the trains were open and people could go, but my friend's got asthma, and I didn't want to, let's say, pick it up on the train, even if I'm wearing a mask or something, and I end up giving it to him, and he ends up getting sick, or I get sick, and, or even worse, could even get really sick and die even. So I thought that, the risk wasn't worth it, not just the risk for me, but especially the risk to my friend. So I ended up staying home. And I knew it wasn't going to be a brilliant one, but in the day before Christmas Eve, I tried phoning my dad because I had some presents for the family, mum, dad, brother, and I couldn't get through. It just went straight to voicemail, So, didn't even go to voicemail. Sorry, it said that this phone is, is turned off. So I tried again the next day, Christmas Eve, got the same message. Tried again a couple of times, still the same thing. So on Christmas Day, I really didn't have any choice. I tried my brother, but he didn't pick up the phone. And then a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to him, and he decided that he couldn't have anything to do with me anymore because he didn't want to be in the middle between my mum and my brother. My mum and me, sorry. And it's like, well, I don't want you to be that. I just want you to be my brother. We can have a relationship even though me and mum hasn't got a relationship. And he just didn't want to do that. So he's clearly taken her side. And it took almost 2 years for me to get an answer. Because I'd phoned him up a number of times and he never picked up. Always went to voicemail. I'd sent him at least 3 messages. He never replied. So So like I say, I tried phoning my brother, didn't pick up. So the only thing I had left was I sent a text message to my mum, and I asked her to get my dad to phone him. So it was like, can you get Dad to phone me, please? And so he phoned me up a little while later, and and he said he'd pop by later, and he never turned up. I sat in the cold because my living room door, it's a fire door, and if the door's shut and I'm listening to something, I can't hear the intercom beep. So, but he didn't turn up. So I was cold all day, basically. On Boxing Day, the day after Christmas Day, I left another message, a text to ask if he'd be popping by to pick up the presents, and I got a text message to say he'd be popping by on Tuesday, the 29th. It actually ended up being the 3rd. No, was it? No, okay. I didn't have that marked down. But anyway, it was several days later. And unfortunately, I've effectively come to realise that none of them are a reliable source of support for me. My mum's disowned me. My brother's never responded to any of my messages. Now he said that he can't be involved with me because that's getting between me and his brother, which is childish in the extreme. I mean, it's basically sort of junior school mentality of I can't be your friend because my friend doesn't like you, and so I can't like you either. That's just ridiculous. And what ended up happening, my dad came along, several days later, and like after Christmas, the first day of work after Christmas, and he popped by and picked him up and gave me the £20 that was in his pocket. That was my Christmas from family. No card, no presents, just a £20 note that he had in his pocket, and the amount of money is irrelevant. It's just the sentiment of it. So and so for my dad, effectively, I'm an afterthought. I mean, one of the things I had a couple of nights where I actually considered suicide, but it was more of a what if rather than an actual intentional desire. If I swallowed a few dozen painkillers, how long before my body is discovered? Days, weeks. Would my family even care or feel guilty? Sure, they might be upset at first, but how long would they feel that guilt? If they felt it at all. Those are the kind of thoughts that pop through my head. And so what I realised is that I just couldn't rely on them to be a support. I asked my dad to check up on me, from time to time, just see how I'm doing, kind of thing. He hasn't phoned since then. That was, start of January. We're talking, 4 months, nearly 5 months in, and still haven't heard a thing. So I'm an afterthought. He responds well when I phone up or even ask him for help. I mean, in October I bought a new big TV. He helped me pick it up from the store and bring it home. But like I say, that was it. If I ask for it, he will help, but he doesn't volunteer anything. Doesn't even volunteer a phone call, see how I'm doing, kind of thing. And someone once said, you only really grow up when your parents die, because they can never ever again support you, whether it's emotionally or financially or, if you have, problems in your life or whatever. So effectively, it's made me feel a bit like an orphan. While my dad might be there in reality, when it comes to preemptive concern, I'm on my own. No, critical cripple. I don't think so. My mum maybe. But, apparently according to my dad, she's never even mentioned me since. So, you know, they must talk about other things. To be honest, though, they spend a lot of time. She's in the living room, in the dining room. He's in the living room because they watch their own telly. He likes sport. She doesn't. She likes, Coronation Street and Emmerdale and stuff like that, and he doesn't. So, so they probably don't have a lot of crosstalk about stuff in general. So, that's that. That's been a kind of a bit of a hard. I kind of had to mourn my my loss of family concern for me, and so, I've effectively accepted I only need one person to care for my future, and that's me. That's it. That's the most important person I need to care for me, and that's me. So that's what I've got to do. And that sounds like a really negative thing to finish on, but I've had so many nice things happen. Obviously the positive things, the negative things all often come out the biggest. But like I say, my transition's happening. I have so many wonderful things coming up, that once I start taking those hormones, hopefully my relief will just, and I've heard it's a bit like, when you get into a nice hot bath or a shower or something like that, and you just have this kind of thing going on. I'm hoping that that's how things are going to work. So, like I say, but that's all the exciting stuff. My transition is finally starting to happen after 2.25 years of waiting. Now things are starting to happen. I've had my first assessment. My second one is coming up within a month, I would estimate now, about 2-3 weeks, something like that, if they stick to a 6 weeks schedule. Like I say, I phoned up last week, and I was told that the doctor would be looking at my blood work stuff, either Thursday or maybe after, and that, and then, I'll get this second assessment. So, it's all looking good. The future is bright. The future is the future's orange. So yeah, I'm really, as much as I've talked about some negative stuff, most of what's has happened has been positive, because I'm not going to sit around and worry every day about my mum. I can't, because all that'll do is just make me sick. It'll stay in there, and I can't afford for it to hold me back, because I'm moving forward. I'm not staying back there. I'm moving forward. If they can't come with me on that journey, okay, I've just got to accept that. The irony is that my father, this is my biological father, he came to accept me so much easier. Seriously, I mean, my stepdad, I've talked to him about 6 times. He's never called me Laura yet. In fact, he accidentally used my guy name the last time he said anything to me, which is like, physically he said something when we brought the TV back. So, which kind of bit, was a bit bitter. It tasted in my mouth rather than his. He probably didn't even realise he did it. It just, he's so used to saying it that, he's not thinking me as Laura yet. But my father, it was much easier for him. Maybe because we're not so close, but he certainly respects me and the choices I've made about my future. So that's nice. The difficulty is that I'm not sure I really love my father as such. I mean, I'm related to him by kin, but that doesn't, he was pretty awful as a parent when I was younger. I mean, just to give you an example, I lived with him for about 4 months, maybe a bit more, in the 80s. It's a long story, but the short version is I got thrown out of Germany because I got into a fight, and the Air Force basically told my stepdad and mum, you got 24 hours to get him out of the country, or we kick you out of the Air Force. And so I ended up living with my grandma for 6 months, and then lived with my father for a few months, and then I ended up in a children's home because I had a bit of a mental episode because the stress of this guy being awful. He was a bully. He really was. And I ended up having a rage thing, and there was some glass broken, and I kind of cut. And it wasn't deep or anything. It was just, I don't know. It was a weird, stupid reaction. And what he said to me is, "You should have cut that way. If you were serious, you should have cut that way." I was 12. So, that was screwed up. Now, last year, he said, oh, it might have been earlier this year, but he basically said that he realised that he was obnoxious when he was younger and that he thought he knew everything. And, so it's interesting that he's come to terms with, as he's got older, he's become wiser, and he's come to terms with the fact that he was a fucking arsehole when he was younger. So, that's basically where, where it goes with that. But like I say, the only thing that upset him, was he chose my guy name, and that was obviously one of the things I got rid of. So, it was that was pretty hard for him, I think. But like I say, he's come to accept, and he chose it because it couldn't be teased easily. I don't want to give you my guy name because I never really have, actually. I've never really used it. I was used to use Cliff Jumper before, and I had more people call me Cliff, including some horrible arsehole Christian lunatic called Richard Raspberry, who once referred to, this Clifford. Well, I was never Clifford. It was Cliff Jumper. So that always made me chuckle, because, he must have thought my name was actually Cliff. Anyway, doesn't matter. So, like I say, all the stuff that's going on now is all positive. Yes, I've got this little bit at the back of my head about my family and stuff, but I can't concentrate on that. I have to build a foundation for myself to live on, and that can't be a part of it because it's a weak foundation, and I need to be strong to get through this. And I've got my coping strategies with how to deal with it. Hopefully I should be fine with it. And now I'm getting hormones soon. That's the part. That's the next major step. The me coming out and me living my life as I'm living, and doing well doing it. That's the core part of me. My transition, and like I say, my social transition is pretty much there now. I'm living as I'm living all the time. I'm out there. I'm not afraid to be me anymore, which is what I explained with the street preachers and the bike and stuff like that. I'm creating a new identity for myself. I think it's a bit of lipstick. So, yeah, like I say, I changed my name. That's me manifesting an identity, for myself. But of course, if you can imagine an identity as a ball, yes, the name is just the circle of the ball, but I've got to fill it with stuff. And the stuff I've got to fill it with is a combination of my personality, my history. If you look at my videos, I haven't deleted or, hidden any of my old videos because I'm perfectly happy with those there. I'm trans. I live my life as a guy. That was a reality. Just because I've changed now doesn't mean to say the rest of it is worthless now. The worst thing I could do is remake some of them. I've got, I've got my, my silly little video about how to deal with the Great Debate community, or the commercial break video I've got, which is worth having a look at. It's funny. So like I say, my Oreo cookies one. Have a watch of that video. That's entertaining. Very short, bit like my first the video I did earlier today, but So yeah, so that's it basically. That's it. I'm doing well. My transition is finally the medical part of my transition is about to begin. My social transition is doing incredibly well. I'm being me. People know who I am for being me. They don't know as I used to be. I mean, as who was it? Was it April or who was it? Marcy. I've only ever known you as Laura. So I've got lots of people who've only ever known me as Laura and never knew me as Cliffjumper. Well, that's how it needs to be. So like I say, I'm doing very, very well, and so I'll keep you updated soon. Like I say, when I start taking hormones, I'm probably going to start documenting how I'm feeling, because I do keep this gender diary. I call it gender change, but it's a gender diary, and it's the sort of things that have happened, things how I feel, how I'm progressing, and it's got negative stuff because life is full of positive and negatives, but mostly it's positives, because the positives are, finding out who I am now, creating a new identity for myself, and it's not just based upon what my name is. It's based upon who I've always been on the inside. I just couldn't declare it before. So, yep. So that's it. I'm going to get going now, and I hope everybody has a good day. I hope everyone had a good enjoyed watching this. If you want a thumbs up, that would be very nice. But there's no massive obligation for it, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. So take care of yourself, and good night.